Hello everyone, Andy Wolverton here with Journeys in Darkness and Light. And today I'm kicking off a 5-part video series called The Beckie Project, which I briefly covered in an introductory video. I'll link to that video in the description. When my coworker Beckie and I began discussing movies a few years ago, we soon realized we had very different movie tastes. So when she came up with a movie exchange idea to broaden our cinematic horizons, how could I say no? Now, Beckie knows the kinds of movies that I watch, which is practically anything, but I tend to favor film noir, classic movies, international cinema, or things slightly off or way off the beaten path. When I once told her my intention to watch the 13-hour film Out One in French with English subtitles, she sat in her office shaking her head and waving her hands. She replied, "I have movie tastes more in line with those of a 14-year-old boy." With each of us understanding what the other likes, we decided to exchange 5 films each. Films that the other person had not seen, titles that probably weren't on the other person's radar. These were movies that meant something to us, films we thought and hoped the other person might enjoy. We asked each other a few questions before we got started. I wanted to see if Beckie was willing to watch any international films with subtitles. She wasn't. And I wanted to make sure she would be okay with black and white films. That was okay. I also tried to pick some films that were fairly current, mainly from 2010 and up, as well as a few classics. I didn't pick any silent films. Most of the movies Beckie chose for me were from the year 2000 and up, and one in the late 80s, and another was a documentary. Soon we exchanged our 5 movie lists and made sure we had access to them. Sometimes we had to loan them to each other or get them from the library or stream them. So from my list, Beckie chose to begin with Ace in the Hole from 1951. And from her list, I chose Step Brothers from 2008. We took about a week to watch them and got back to each other, meeting during work breaks. I think I liked Step Brothers more than Beckie thought I would. She's a huge Will Ferrell fan and a pretty substantial John C. Reilly fan as well. I've seen more John C. Reilly movies than I have Will Ferrell movies, but I like both of them for different reasons. I enjoyed the performances of the 2 leads and also of Richard Jenkins and Mary Steenburgen as the parents. I enjoyed director Adam McKay's poking fun at the problem, is it a problem, phenomenon, tragedy, of guys in their 30s or older living at home with their parents. I mentioned to Beckie that this is what seems like a vehicle film, although that term has changed over the years. Clearly, this is a film designed to bring in fans of both Ferrell and Reilly, which is fine. I don't know much about how the script was put together, how much of that was in place, and how much freedom the 2 leads had. Maybe they did a lot of ad-libbing. I don't really know, but it didn't really matter. I thought that was fine. The film has a definite level of predictability, which, again, is also fine, but I did enjoy it. Beckie mentioned that Step Brothers is something of a comfort movie for her, that she's seen the film many times and can pop it into the DVD player at any time and enjoy it. "It's just a stupid movie," she said. "Not necessarily," I said. As I mentioned earlier, I think that amid the laughs, there's a real satirical look at how our culture operates on multiple levels. So I enjoyed Step Brothers, and I was glad I watched it. Now, the first thing that Beckie mentioned about Ace in the Hole was the acting. She considered much of it over the top and wondered if all acting from this era was like this. I told her I didn't really think of it as over-the-top acting, although I can see how she might have thought that just from the acting of Kirk Douglas. I think part of that is simply Douglas being Douglas, but another part of that is the character of Chuck Tatum. And maybe part of that is also the era in which the film was made, which includes the Hays Code that didn't allow writers to write the dialogue they wanted to write. So much of what they wanted to say had to be reflected in a different choice of words, a tone of voice, or other ways in which the lines were delivered. I also confessed to Beckie that Billy Wilder is one of my favorite directors, also mentioning that he directed Double Indemnity, which at the time we had just screened at the library's Great Movies program. Beckie said that she'd never really thought about directors before. She said, "You think about movies way more than I do." I told her that I believe a director's vision and influence often give a movie a certain look and feel that make his or her films unique. Now, we didn't go into it, but I'm not a huge proponent of the auteur theory. The director is clearly important, but so are the writers, cinematographers, editors, etc. But that's another topic for another time. I asked Beckie whom she thought was the most despicable character in Ace in the Hole: Chuck Tatum, played by Douglas, or Lorraine Minosa, played by Jan Sterling, the indifferent wife of the trapped man. It's a tough call, but I think we both fall on the side of Tatum getting the bulk of the blame. Lorraine is scolded only by Tatum, which is definitely the pot calling the kettle black, but his main purpose is to sell papers and to propel himself back into a big city newspaper job. Now, Tatum is surrounded on all sides of this film with religious imagery, and that comes in the form of crosses hung on walls, people praying for the trapped man, a priest, even non-religious messages like "tell the truth" in an embroidery hanging in the newspaper office. You could say that Tatum is constantly surrounded with reminders of caring people and doing the right thing, but he really only cares for himself. So we both enjoyed our movies for this first round. The second round would prove even more interesting. So stay tuned, and thanks for watching.